First off, I apologize because one, after I got off the stream from my Raw review, I ended up getting a call from my best friend. We talked for about 20-25 minutes. I was in the middle of trying to watch an episode of Friends, and then I had something else in mind for the stream that I completely forgot about until I pressed the start button to start recording the stream. So I literally just ran downstairs in my kitchen, grabbed myself something that I like to call, well, we'll get to that in a second. I can't actually do the real thing in here because I'm in my bedroom, but I am here. Guys, what is going on? This is the Club of DaMan's 1993, and we are here live for the final of my best of 2020 Wrestling Awards, as this is DaMan's Best of 2020 End of the Year Wrestling Awards. We, of course, we have done several of these streams already for WWE and AEW. Now I'm doing one last stream combining all the shows together, and we're going to do some bests and some worsts. Some I've already talked about from previous videos, and I will just acknowledge here. There's technically only 15 categories, but in some of the categories there's more than one award. There's several categories that I did: the best of AEW, the best of WWE, the worst, and then the overall. That's what I did for some of these categories. Not all of them, but some of them. Like I said in my top 10 specials, AEW wasn't perfect, but it didn't have too many, I could think of that was, god-awful. I consider it, a worst. So there really isn't any worst for AEW in here. Most of the worst, of course, came from WWE. So I'm not being, biased towards AEW, although I did think of the AEW as a stronger brand. Spoiler alert, you'll be hearing about that shortly in the first category. But, yes, I'm going to finally wrap all these up, and we're going to have some fun. So, guys, of course, before we start the stream, I would like to say we are celebrating today, which is March 16th. It is Austin 3/16 Day. I will take this. Uh-oh. Got it. Open myself a can of whoop ass. And that's the bottom line, because Stone Cold said so. I will be drinking more of that tonight, of course. But yeah, I grabbed myself a can of Yingling. That's literally a bottle of Yingling. I literally ran all the way downstairs just to grab a thing of Yingling. That way I'd have something to do, even though I can't, pour the beer over my face, like, Austin does. But I'm not doing that in my bedroom. But yes, I'm going to be here, of course, here and there. This is my energy, a swig of Yingling, and doing my Best of Wrestling Awards for 2020. And if you are here in the live chat, which is nobody in the live chat, we got one like, so thank you for my one like. But if you're in the live chat, make sure to leave me your thoughts, your bests, and your worst from these categories as we just wind down, we finish off these Best of 2020 streams. Again, I try my best, and I will try when it gets to the end of 2021 to try to do these, more like December or whatnot. But like I said, my busiest time of the year at work, and again, my life is a lot more busier now outside of YouTube, and of course, doing these graphics do take time. I spent all day Sunday working on these graphics, so I wish I could do this stuff more often, but like I said, it's on my time and whenever I can do it. But without any further ado, because it is already 9:49, let's get rolling. Let's start off with category number 1. Category number 1 is my best brand of the year. And of course, this will be go for, the WWE or AEW. Could be Raw, could be SmackDown, could be NXT, could be NXT UK maybe also, for crying out loud. WWE. 2020 in general was a tough year for wrestling. And of course for all of us. With the pandemic, Live crowds being taken away. Some, had a little bit more of like limited access to them. So obviously it did hurt the wrestling business. Some brands like, of course, NXT, whose show is built around, was really like, one of the best things about NXT was the live crowds. But of course, with WWE being very full of their egos, unfortunately, they took this opportunity to be in full control of not just the superstars, but even also the crowd reactions. So that hurt the shows drastically, especially NXT. So for one of the first times ever, my brand of the year is not NXT. Here is the first award for DaMan's brand of the year for 2020.
The Club of DaMan 1993 presents DaMan's 2020 End of the Year Wrestling Awards. DaMan's Wrestling Brand of the Year for 2020 is All Elite Wrestling.
2020 was AEW's first full year as an active brand. They, of course, had their debut in general at Double or Nothing in 2019. And they continue to have a couple sparingly shows throughout the summer, leading to their debut of AEW Dynamite on TNT on October 2nd, 2019. In 2020, they continue to expand as they, of course, have their YouTube special AEW Dark, and also recently just started AEW Dark Evolution. What I really appreciate about AEW this year is, of course, not only have they given us a taste, a fresh avenue for wrestling, like a nice alternate for those who are, losing interest in the wrestling product, such as, of course, the WWE and, any other wrestling company in general. And it was also an opportunity to see, other wrestlers who have not gotten the proper opportunities elsewhere come together and not just only get the opportunities that, they deserve the shot at, but also to have some creative freedom as well with their characters and get more of their input in on what they want to do with with their own careers. They've had some home runs, they've had some strikeouts. It's still, a growing trial for AEW. As, they've had some moments, behind the scenes and, on screen where they had to, have make some adjustments. One of their biggest setbacks, of course, was how they handled the Matt Hardy situation at AEW All Out, which by far has been their weakest show. But still, decent show is their weakest show. AEW shows that they do their best to please their fans. I would also say that AEW did the best job also during the pandemic, as not only did they have, they allowed wrestlers to be at the beginning to sit in as fans, but they allowed them to just be fans, not micromanage, not, cheering the heck out of the baby faces and booing every single heel that comes out. They actually made you feel like you're watching a live wrestling show. And then eventually, Daily's Place started allowing a small portion of fans to attend the shows. And to me, I feel like of all the brands, well, that I watch at least, they've handled the pandemic very well while being able to remain being a strong brand that does things right. And what I also consider to praise AEW for, it's not just about what AEW does. Not only has AEW formed partnerships with people from New Japan or even recently Impact Wrestling, they celebrate wrestling as a whole. It's not all about, AEW this, AEW that, AEW this, AEW that. It's like, the sport of wrestling, it's a show that just celebrates the sport of wrestling. And they show these guys are not full of their egos. They're there to have fun. They're there to put on the best. They're there to please the fans. And if it doesn't work out, it happens. but they're not out there to continuously insult our intelligence like WWE has been for quite a while. So, their first full year was an excellent year. Obviously, it has something they can still improve on, but All Elite Wrestling is my 2020 brand of the year for 2020. Now I'll move on to category number 2. Category number 2, of course, is be the first category as we split up into 4, different awards. AEW's best, WWE's best, the worst, and the overall. Of course, the overall is kind of be repetition, but it's more so what was the best out of all of them. But like I said, I would normally do just one of these streams. But I like to talk about more than one thing for each category usually, which is why I do different top 10s and top 5s and whatnot, or stuff like this where I'm sharing the best from AEW, the best from WWE, the worst, and the overall, because I want to talk about more than just one. Again, even though wrestling has a lot of its sucky points, there's still some things that we still enjoy as wrestling fans that we still like to share. So that's why for category number 2 is storylines, the best and the worst storylines of the year. So we're going to start off, of course, with the best AEW storyline. Now, again, I know we probably talked about these already in the previous streams, but just to recap for ones we talked about, let's first talk about Award 2A, the AEW Best Storyline of the Year.
DaMan's Best AEW Segment of the Year goes to Le Dîner de Bonheur on the October 21st, 2020 edition of AEW Dynamite.
And, well, I sincerely apologize. I meant to say the best segment of the year. Not storyline, but segment. So, that's Award 2A, the best segment of the year. But my favorite segment for AEW, they had a couple really good ones that really just knocked it out of the ballpark for me, of course. We had, of course, the entire tribute show for Mr. Brody Lee on the Wednesday after he had passed away. We had the debut of Sting. Even I'll give credit to the debut of Miro or FTR. The segment where FTR turned heel and attacked the Rock and Roll Express. We had several, very memorable segments this year. But to me, the one that really stood out, the one that felt entertained me the most, is two guys. One who's already a legend, one who's just beginning his career. The Le Dîner de Bonheur segment on the October 21st, 2021 edition of AEW Dynamite with Chris Jericho and MJF. This, of course, was involved in the storyline building to MJF wanting to join the Inner Circle. The chemistry of Chris Jericho and MJF is just off the charts. When they start teasing this feud, it shows that these two can basically, just hit it off. They have excellent chemistry. It's basically, in some ways, another Chris Jericho and Kevin Owens. Except this time, of course, they're taking off the whole coward champion crap that they got in WWE. But from the moment this feud started, whenever they had MJF playing the mind games, not straight up saying he wanted to join the Inner Circle, even though he obviously had bad intentions. Chris Jericho and MJF had this steak dinner to discuss things. And they, of course, were just trying to, play the mind games with each other and outdo each other, basically saying, I'll have mine medium well. Well, if you want yours medium well, I'll take mine medium rare. And the back and forthness there. They continue to discuss things. They then, of course, had one of those, and then it just turned into just one of those, little, Broadway segments. And some people found it corny. I found it hilarious. This was not just hilarious, it was entertaining, and it just really showed two guys that had excellent chemistry together that obviously, they benefit by being, involved in some sort of a stable together. Which is what led to MJF eventually joining the Inner Circle. The match they had at Full Gear, I'll be honest, was a little bit disappointing. MJF saying he's going to do whatever he has to do, and then, did some basic little thing. It just, kind of, felt like a little bit like a wet fart. But eventually, what it's led to happened on Dynamite last week when MJF pretty much formed his own stable with FTR, Tully Blanchard, and Sean Spears, and Wardlow, of course. This was just, a segment that set up all that for down the road to come. But just in general, this Broadway performance just showed two guys who had excellent chemistry put on a very entertaining act. So that is why Le Dinner Debonair from the August 21st, 2020 edition of AEW Dynamite was my AEW segment of the year. Now I'll move on to my WWE best segment of the year. This one was tough because I didn't really remember too many really good segments. I mean, we had like The Undertaker's retirement, but let's face it, even though it's the best we could have gotten, took place at the right show, it could have been much more than that. Honestly, I don't remember too many. I could also maybe give credit to the segment where it's revealed that Roman Reigns is a Paul Heyman guy. That was excellent. The stuff with Roman Reigns and Jey Uso's segments leading up to their feud, that was good as well. I could also maybe give one to this one segment between John Cena and Bray Wyatt in the build to their match at WrestleMania 36, where they both spit some truth in each other's face. There was some, but it was hard. The one that I felt was very well done, though, was one that began a feud right after Royal Rumble, leading to a last man standing match at WrestleMania. Of course, this got the moment at the Royal Rumble that was involved with one of these superstars was definitely excellent as well. This, though, set up a really, really excellent angle. And it just shows, when he is on the ball, Randall Keith Orton is just on fire. And this set him up for a huge rebound year for sure for Randy Orton's career. So let's talk about my best segment of the year in WWE in 2020.
DaMan's WWE segment of the year for 2020 is Randy Orton's turn on Edge on the January 27th, 2020 edition of Monday Night Raw.
You talk about a segment that is just hard to watch, that is just heartbreaking, and the storytelling was just so well done, and the story that it just led to. This segment right here from Raw, the night after Royal Rumble 2020, when we got one of the biggest returns that we never thought we'd see. Edge returning 9 years after being medically disqualified back in 2011 due to triple fusion neck surgery. Did any of us ever think we'd see Edge wrestle in a ring again? Not me. And I've always said that seeing Edge wrestle live was one of my dreams. So, of course, the night after WrestleMania, night after Royal Rumble, we wanted to know Edge, how, why, what was the story, what led to this? He came back and basically said it was always just, a what if? He, had his surgery, he started feeling pretty good, and he just kept asking himself, what if? And, eventually it happened. And, even when you go back and watch his 24 special about the road to his return and the story behind that, which, by the way, he pretty much implied there he got offered money to go wrestle with AEW, but he turned it down and came back to WWE instead, even though Christian didn't do the same thing. He says he's recently gone to AEW, but, that's that. But that 24 documentary is supposed to be about life after wrestling, and it changed into his road to coming back. And he's known for a while. We kind of got a little bit of a tease when he speared Elias at SummerSlam 2019. So then, Edge returns at the Royal Rumble, has an excellent performance, and has a brief reunion with Randy Orton, and briefly reunites Rated RKO. So the following night, after Edge cuts his promo on his return, out comes Randy Orton. He basically just it says he's happy for Edge, he's happy he's here, and he goes, he's feeling some type of energy. So he just wants to propose an idea, and that is, what if Team Rated RKO got back together again one more time? And I thought, okay, I mean, at the time, I think Seth Rollins and Buddy Murphy were the Raw Tag Team Champions. I'm like, okay, like Rollins and Murphy versus Rated RKO for the tag titles at Mania, like, I'm game, let's go, especially since Seth Rollins was just coming off of a new heel character, and remember, there was history between Seth Rollins and Edge, dating back to, of course, where Seth Rollins had used Edge as a pawn to force John Cena to bring back the Authority at the end of 2014. But then, Randy Orton, who had been a face for about a month, bam, turns heel again, and just viciously attacks Edge with an RKO and a concerto to the head, but at the same time showing a lot of emotion. And it led to this story where Randy Orton basically, playing the mind games, the emotion, claiming he's doing this because he cares about Edge, and he thinks that Edge should not be chancing himself with trying to finish his wrestling career on his terms and just try to be, focused on life after wrestling. Obviously, though, Edge was not buying into that, saying that Randy's jealous and he doesn't want Edge basically taking away his spotlight and all that jazz. But this segment, again, was just so beautifully well done. It was definitely one of the best Randy Orton segments we've seen in a while, with the emotion from, the happy galore moment of the tease of Rated RKO getting back together again, and then to just the brutal assault, writing Edge off TV, leaving us wondering, will Edge still be continuing to make his big comeback? And of course, we eventually got that. And now, a year later, Edge has won the Royal Rumble from the number 1 spot, and will be headlining WrestleMania against Roman Reigns. That is my pick for my best WWE segment of 2020. Now, let's get a little sour here. Let's talk about the worst segment of 2020. We had several bad ones. I mean, quite frankly, I forgot about most of them. So, only one really stood out to me for this one. That was god-awful to me. And I'm just going to get right to it. Let's talk about the worst segment in 2020 in wrestling.
DaMan's worst segment of the year in wrestling in 2020 is the Karaoke Showdown on the July 10th, 2020 edition of SmackDown.
Oh boy. So, the July 10th, 2020 edition of SmackDown. They had this karaoke segment between 4 members of the women's division on SmackDown. At the time, all 4 of them were faces. And it was led by no one other than, long before he was main event, Jey Uso. So he hosted a segment, and it just had Lacey Evans, Dana Brooke, Tamina, and Naomi had this karaoke session. The only one that was a believable singer to me was Naomi. But it was just dreadful. It was just one of those, are we going back to the Divas era? Which they've teased several times, and if they would do it, it is absolutely ridiculous if they did. But what was even more stupid about this segment, it led to Lacey Evans turning heel. She got mad because Naomi won, and she started throwing shoes at her or something. The dialogue was just crap, and it led to a match, and it was just... So, you basically forced a face turn on Lacey Evans. You tried to make her a babyface, it did not work. Of course, anytime WWE has tried to push, like a babyface turn on us, they don't give up on it. They keep going, and they do not care what you say. Well, unless it was like Roman Reigns and they actually pulled the trigger on it in the end. But of course, the same kind of happened to Lacey Evans. But yeah, they have Lacey Evans go from a bully to being, this hero that just did not work, and back to being a heel again, all over losing a karaoke segment. This was dreadful. Like I said, none of these women could sing, except for Naomi, and it was just awful. And like I said, I don't remember much about these worst segments. This was just one that just came off the top of my head. So that's all I gotta say about that one. Moving on to the final category for the segment of the year. The overall segment of the year. Drumroll please. Which one will it be? Will it be the Dinner Debonair from AEW or Randy Orton's turn on Edge? Which one is it? Let's find out.
DaMan's overall wrestling segment of the year in 2020 is Randy Orton's turn on Edge on the January 27th, 2020 edition of Monday Night Raw.
It was a tough decision, but yes. One of the very few times, really, I think one other time a couple more times I think I have, WWE getting the Edge over, no pun intended since this segment doesn't involve Edge, getting the Edge with the overall segment of the year, again, in my opinion, was Randy Orton's turn on Edge on the January 27th, 2020 edition. Again, I just thought this thing was just so beautifully well done. Again, involving Edge, who, again, was never supposed to come back to wrestle again. Never. But then, you got Randy Orton, who had, been a heel for a while, kind of, lost some steam, randomly turned face again. Let me just put it this way. Them turning him face very briefly for a month actually made this segment work even more. Because you did not expect it. You had them tease a reunion in the Rumble. Edge eliminated Orton in the Rumble. Orton was like, whatever, basically. So you thought, they're still fine. But when you have Randy Orton just go all psycho, like 2009 Randy Orton, and has this, explosive, emotional side, trying to take Edge out of action, just when he just gets done winning a battle to get his career back, it was just amazing. One of the best, especially in front of a crowd, too. This was indeed one of the best moments we had in front of a crowd in 2020. I can't think of anything else better than this. Dinner Debonair was excellent, of course, but with, how just spot on perfect this was with the storytelling, the emotion, just the fact also we were having Edge back as well, and then, of course, having the story of the uncertainty as whether Edge could continue or not. I felt that this was very fitting and an excellent segment, and again, my overall segment of the year for 2020. So now we move on from segments. Now we got storylines. We didn't talk about any top 10 best or worst segments. I couldn't come up with a strong list for them at all. But I did remember doing some storylines for both WWE and AEW. So most of these will be a repeat. We'll start, of course, again with the best AEW storyline of the year. Again, this was, I thought, the strongest storyline that AEW did, that lasted most of the year, basically. It was one that involved a superstar that, they hadn't taken the chains off him yet, but we knew how good he could be. And we have another superstar who, not as familiar with people in the crowd, but he oh no, don't tell me my thing's acting up again. Please don't do this to me. Hang on. Okay, we're good. Alright, we're good. Scary for a second. I saw the thing blinking there. Okay, we had some lag. Anyways, we should be good now. This storyline was just, it not just, led to, us eventually, taking the chains off of the biggest star involved in this, but it also helped develop another star who was given a big opportunity immediately. Obviously, it was not over yet, but this helped this man grow in the long run. This will not be the last time you hear the name of the one man involved in the storyline in these awards, by the way. So, let's talk about it. What was my best storyline of the year for 2020 in AEW? Here's award 3A.
DaMan's best storyline of the year in AEW for 2020 is the Kenny Omega and Hangman Adam Page saga.
So Kenny Omega and Hangman Adam Page came into 2020 right before they had won the tag titles. They formed a team together. Kenny Omega, of course, being the very well-known best in the world wrestler from his time in New Japan and all other places around the world. Hangman Adam Page was somewhat well-known, but, obviously he was not, knocking out of the ballpark with the fans. He had earned his opportunity and battled Chris Jericho at All Out 2019 to become the first to crown the first ever AEW World Champion. He lost, and it was basically starting back from the ground up for Hangman Adam Page from there. And the story they told just excellently just set up Adam Page as a bigger star in this company. Kenny Omega already forming a good bond with the Elites, the Young Bucks. Hangman Adam Page trying to fit in with the Elite got itself tested. His friendship and partnership with Kenny Omega was tested. Especially at Revolution, when the Young Bucks faced Omega and Page for the tag titles. They would, of course, get past that, get on the same page, but no pun intended. But obviously, other things got in the way eventually, and as Hangman Adam Page started, become more of a thorn in the side for Kenny Omega, and the Young Bucks, obviously, and the friendship of him and Adam Page, falling apart as well. It eventually led to, them dropping the tag titles, and them going one-on-one by the end of the year for the number one contendership for the AEW World Championship. Even though they didn't have, a big, beatdown from Kenny Omega on the Hangman Adam Page I was hoping for, obviously the storyline, though, is not over. As Kenny Omega ended 2020 winning the AEW World Championship, he's basically going all over the place now, from New Japan to Impact to several other brands. I might over-exaggerate on there. But obviously, he's not just trying to, be the best wrestler in AEW. He's trying to reclaim his throne as the best wrestler in the world, as he may have dethroned the possible best wrestler in the world from 2020 to win the AEW World title. So, yes, it was something different for Kenny Omega to do while, they let some other stars develop first before going all out with him. Again, no pun intended. But this also, in the long run, again, helped Hangman Adam Page become a much bigger star, and for him to be ready for that main event scene going into 2021. Just you wait. We may be seeing these two collide again for a singles match for the AEW World title. Maybe by fall. We will have to wait and see. But that is my pick for my best storyline of the year for AEW in 2020. Next, we move on now to my best storyline in WWE for 2020. Now, we had a few good ones, as I mentioned, in there. We, of course, had Roman Reigns and Jey Uso, which I thought was just phenomenal. We've talked about, of course, Edge and Randy Orton. Even the build to Rebel Heart and Blackheart One Final Beat for NXT was a pretty good storyline. We had some pretty good builds, despite some, ups and downs with the pandemic. But the one that stood out to me, of course, obviously, was the one man who finally got his shot after years of, not succeeding, getting fired, completely started from scratch and reinventing himself, coming back, and then seizing the opportunity and becoming a main event star, and he handled it very well. The story, though, was just him being himself, which is why this is my best storyline in WWE for 2020. Oop.
DaMan's best storyline of the year in WWE in 2020 is Drew McIntyre's rise to the top.
Drew McIntyre, again, as we talked about before, always has had the potential. Has had the look, has had the charisma, has the promo skills, in-ring work. He had it all. Of course, he was originally brought in as the Chosen One about 10 years ago into WWE. Unfortunately, though, things did not work out for him the first time around. As he was eventually fired, he went back to the Indies in Impact Wrestling for a few years. Basically, again, had to start over from scratch and reinvent himself. And he found his strides. He would eventually come back in 2017 and get a brief run in NXT and actually win the NXT Championship off of Bobby Roode. Brief run before injury wrote him off TV and he dropped the title to Andrade Cien Almas. After some time off the injury, he would return shortly after WrestleMania 34, and he would immediately be involved in the tag team with Dolph Ziggler before being set free. 2019, I felt, should have been his year. But, they weren't quite ready to give him that spot yet. 2020, though, with the immediate face turn, and him just naturally getting over, leading him to winning the Royal Rumble match, eliminating Brock Lesnar, and setting up for his match for WrestleMania 36, where he dethroned Brock Lesnar for the WWE Championship. It is unfortunate, again, that he unfortunately was not able to have that moment in front of a live audience. That moment that he had worked so hard for many years, and he didn't have the actual fans there to just congratulate him, give him, the explosive reaction that he should have gotten winning the WWE Championship. The most he could do was just reach towards the camera and say thank you, as he was emotional that night for sure. But McIntyre, would go on to feud with the likes of Seth Rollins, with Bobby Lashley, Dolph Ziggler, had a long feud with Randy Orton, which he briefly dropped the title to Randy Orton, just to, kind of just spice up his character and his entrance a little bit more to win the title back right before Survivor Series, and have a very good match against Roman Reigns at Survivor Series. And he also had a match with AJ Styles at TLC. Even though at times he wasn't given, the best, stuff to work with, I felt Drew, after what happened in 2019 with Seth Rollins cracking under the pressure as the top guy, Drew McIntyre found himself, especially in the promos he cut at the beginning of his feud with Randy Orton. Drew McIntyre eventually found himself, and, well, I felt that handled himself as a main event star like a champ. I felt he did excellent. Again, I feel bad that he wasn't able to experience the biggest moment of his career in front of, a live audience. It's possible he may be getting that at WrestleMania 37, even though it wouldn't be as big of a deal because he's already won the championship twice now. But this was the year of Drew McIntyre. And again, all they had to do was have him be himself. That's all his character was. He was himself. Just told the simple story of him leaving, coming back, and finding himself. That's all they had to do. And it made Drew McIntyre a main event star. So that, to me, is my best storyline for 2020 for WWE. Now let's crank back down again to the negative side. We now have the top 10. The worst storyline of 2020. Again, there was a lot of them. Of course, we got some very crappy ones. For the feud with Seth Rollins and the Mysterios. Oh dear God, I never thought that was going to end. That went on forever. Forever. And ever. And, that's definitely one big honorable mention. trying to think of which other ones we had. I'm trying to forget the ones, to be honest, that were awful. There was some good, some bad. But anyways, let's get to it. Here was my worst storyline of the year for 2020.
DaMan's worst storyline of the year in 2020 for wrestling is Retribution.
So, Retribution came about sometime like in the middle of the summer. Maybe around like SummerSlam, maybe, or right after Extreme Rules or somewhat. Retribution started lurking around, basically teasing themselves as the next Nexus. They had, of course, a segment on SmackDown where they basically came out and just destroyed the ring. Obviously, the eventual storyline for them was basically guys who, got furloughed and let go during, the pandemic, and they were coming back to basically get their revenge on the company. Keep in mind, again, that is pretty much people trying to ruin your company and people you want to keep out, right? Well, that's not how it went. Eventually, after weeks and weeks of them just coming out and wrecking havoc, starting to get boring, not just telling us who they are, they eventually come out, and first off, they're obviously former NXT superstars. They consist of, now led by Mustafa Ali, or of course Mustafa Ali, as he was before he was revealed as the leader of Retribution, T-Bar, Dominic Dijakovic, Mace, Dio Madden, Slapjack, Shane Thorne, Reckoning, who's obviously Mia Yim, and then at the time, I can't remember what her name in Retribution was going to be, but Mercedes Martinez was also originally in this stable, but then she got removed from it and sent back to NXT, which, God bless her soul for sure. And not only that, you had them signed to contracts, and you also had them drafted to Raw in the draft. So, you've already made them look like idiots, changing their names to some ridiculous laughingstock names. You have them wreak havoc, basically threaten to destroy your company for ages, just to have them given jobs. Why? Like, what sense did that make for WWE to, them to wreak havoc, try to destroy their show, just to let them be brought in for what? And poor Mustafa Ali. Mustafa Ali has cut some pretty darn good promos since being revealed as the leader of Retribution. You could tell he's doing his best to make this work. He just does not have the machine behind him to make this work. It's a shame, because he is talented, he can wrestle, he can talk, and most of the guys in this stable can do all that. Problem is they've been booked like jokes, and now they're basically reduced to absolutely nothing. Of course, Retribution has been teasing a breakup because they've really done nothing but lose, so I'm just waiting for that to happen. So, take a swig of my beer here real quick. The worst storyline of the year to me in wrestling in 2020 was indeed Retribution. And of course, before we take a brief second to check the live chat, let's move on to the overall best storyline of the year. So it is, of course, between the Kenny Omega and Hangman Adam Page saga, or the rise to the top of Drew McIntyre. Who was it? Let's reveal it right now for the overall storyline of the year for 2020.
DaMan's overall storyline in wrestling in 2020 is the Kenny Omega and Hangman Adam Page saga.
That's right, it was a tough choice, but I had to go with Kenny Omega and Hangman Adam Page. Again, as I said before, Kenny Omega, of course, obviously, coming to AEW, people thought he was going to be the big name on this show. Well, it was kind of a wise idea at some point to, not make it that obvious that he was the big star. Plus, also, not everyone knew Kenny Omega. So to allow him to be in this role, working with Hangman Adam Page, not only get to know him, but also help, give him a rub to get to know Hangman Adam Page as well. Have him on a level that he's working in this, this dominating unit with Kenny Omega, and even more members of the Elite benefit him in the long run. Of course, Kenny Omega was going to be world champion, but it was an example of just some prime long-term storytelling that not only helped us to get to know Kenny Omega, for those who don't know Kenny Omega, who didn't watch much of his work before AEW, and of course, besides him being well known as one of the best wrestlers in the world, but also helping create Hangman Adam Page become a bigger star as well. So of course, that's why I selected this storyline as my best storyline of the year for wrestling in 2020. The Kenny Omega and Hangman Adam Page saga. So now, of course, before we move on to the next category, which will be matches of the year, let's take a quick break and check the live chat and see what we got here so far. We've got Tyler. Tyler saying worst pay-per-view of the year for him was Extreme Rules. The best pay-per-view of the year was the Royal Rumble for WWE, and best for him was Revolution. Okay? Now I don't have a worst champion category, but for him, his worst champion was Sami Zayn as Intercontinental Champion. His best was Drew McIntyre as WWE Champion. Worst feuds of the year for him were Seth and the Mysterios and Braun and Bray. His best feud of the year was Chris Jericho and Jon Moxley. Good choices. Thank you for joining me, Mark, as well. The worst breakup was Big E from the New Day and AJ going back to Raw and not using him as IC champion on SmackDown. Best cinematic match, Mark said, was the Boneyard match. Worst cinematic match was Braun versus Bray in a swamp fight. I didn't do best and worst cinematics. I just did best and worst matches. But I can kind of agree for sure with that swamp fight. That was not good at all. I still say the worst one still to me was that one with the Street Profits and the Viking Raiders at Backlash. Oh God, that was horrible. That was pointless, and that just made both teams look like complete idiots. But definitely that swamp fight was another one up there. Tyler said his best cinematic match was AJ and Taker. Worst was Braun and Bray. Worst wrestler of Why is Lana still here? And his best wrestler of the year was Drew McIntyre. Good stuff so far, guys. Okay, so let's continue on here. Let's go down to matches of the year. Of course, I definitely talked about these already before. So let's start off with my best match in AEW. And this match took place very early in the year at actually a pay-per-view that Tyler just mentioned in the live chat. That was just off-the-chart wrestling, off-the-chart storytelling, and just one of those few matches you get anymore that just really keep you on your toes and keep you wondering. Let's talk about it. This is my best AEW match of the year for 2020.
DaMan's match of the year in AEW in 2020 is Kenny Omega and Hangman Adam Page versus the Young Bucks for the AEW World Tag Team Championships at AEW Revolution 2020.
Wow. I still remember this one. Like I said, probably when we did my top 10 AEW matches. You ever have a match that has just literally like masterpiece of everything? From wrestling, to storytelling, to drama, to teases, to near fall. This one had it all. You got Kenny Omega and Hangman Adam Page. Again, a star that, was already a star, but they were just holding back on them for the time being, and using him also to help elevate Hangman Adam Page, taking on quite possibly maybe the best tag team in the world, the Young Bucks. And of course, with the history of Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks being good friends, Hangman Adam Page, though, not sure if you can trust any of the three of them. Again, this definitely tested the friendship of Omega and Page. It also tested, the bond with Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks. It was obvious already that Hangman Adam Page didn't trust the Young Bucks, and he meant business. He was in there to make himself a star. And from the drama in this match to the near falls, it got to a point where we couldn't tell you who was going to win that match. It was not predictable. It was not obvious. And what was also not obvious was who was going to come out of this match loving each other, hating each other. It teased, maybe a break between Kenny Omega and Hangman Adam Page. It teased, a crack in the alliance of Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks. It made you wonder if Hangman Adam Page would ever respect the Young Bucks at all and accept them as friends as well. Just so much back and forth drama in this match. Just stuff that kept you on your toes and you didn't know what was coming. We don't get too many of those matches. There's not too many of those matches that give me that thought. This match, though, literally left me wondering who the heck is going to win this. Had my eyes peeled. I was not bored one bit. I could definitely go back and watch this match. This actually, I would say also, would be one of those matches that if you ever wanted to show a casual viewer to help them become a fan of wrestling, show them this match. They will definitely be hooked. So that is my pick for best match of the year in AEW for 2020. Moving on now, my pick for my best match for WWE. And it was tough, because like I mentioned when I did my top 10 matches for WWE, there was a lot of really good matches. None of them to me felt screamed out like match of the year or like number one match of the year. It was tough. So in the end, I went with the best cinematic match of the year. And to me, it was because, of, the storytelling, the just the moment that it was, that it ended up being the final bow for a legend of future, maybe soon to be Hall of Famer, and it was more of like a character match in some ways, but it just worked out perfectly. I was worried about this match, of course, at first, but it ended up being exactly what it needed to be. So this is my WWE match of the year for 2020.
DaMan's best WWE match of 2020 is The Undertaker versus AJ Styles Boneyard match at WrestleMania 36.
So when AJ Styles and The Undertaker started their feud at the beginning of 2020, starting off, I think it was at Super Showdown in that Super, whatever it's called, trophy tournament. Undertaker basically replaced, I think it was Rey Mysterio or Rusev, one of the two. I can't remember who it was in that match. And he took out AJ Styles and he won the trophy. And basically after that, Undertaker kept lurking around. He also costed AJ Styles his match against Aleister Black. Remember him? At Elimination Chamber. And here's the thing. If this was maybe like 10 years ago, probably even earlier than that, this would have been a classic. But the fact that we've had Undertaker, who, again, all respect to him, was just overstaying his welcome, and revealed because he was trying to find that perfect ending to his story. I was worried about this match. I thought this was going to be yet another black mark on Undertaker, just showing his age, just showing that he's just overstaying his welcome, and that anything more to him is just making us not even want to even see him ever wrestle again. Well, this cinematic boneyard match that was the closing match of night 1 of WrestleMania 36 was just outstanding. The effects, the storytelling, just the fact that they had, Undertaker, we had AJ Styles get the upper hand. We had Undertaker basically play all different roles through his entire career, from being, the Minister of Evil to being the Dead Man to being the American Badass. Just basically just playing it all. It was a fun match that just it felt like a celebration. It felt like an actual movie scene. It was a fun match to watch. Hats off also again to AJ Styles because according to the Last Ride documentary, AJ Styles talked the Undertaker into doing this. So hats off to him for trying to make something like this work for Taker and going out of your way for Taker like that. Definitely though, one of the best cinematic matches. I'd say one of the best because my number 2 match for AEW match of the year was definitely the Stadium Stampede. But as far as WWE goes, this was definitely the best cinematic match and my personal match of the year for 2020 for WWE. Now let's go to the worst match of the year. This is a match that literally just showed how much of a joke they really thought of one of their divisions. As this match did absolutely nothing for anybody. It was a waste of time, and everyone in this match came out looking like nothing but a joke. Let's talk about it. Category number 4C, worst match of the year.
DaMan's worst wrestling match of 2020 is the Women's 5-on-5 Survivor Series elimination match at Survivor Series 2020.
There was only one person who came out of this match. Sole Survivor. And she did absolutely nothing. Nothing. And worst part is the backstage politics behind this one. You have Team Raw versus Team SmackDown Women's 5-on-5 Survivor Series elimination match. Team Raw was Nia Jax, Shayna Baszler, Lana, Lacey Evans, and Peyton Royce versus SmackDown's Bianca Belair, Ruby Riott, Liv Morgan, Natalya, and Bayley. You could have set up a lot of different things. This could have been the start of, helping Bianca Belair get a little bit of momentum, giving her being sole survivor. That was leading to her eventual Women's Royal Rumble win. Which, let me tell you something. After what they did in this match, I was terrified for the Women's Royal Rumble as to who I thought they would have win. Because they were having this woman win so many things at this time, but based off of how bad of booking they gave her, made their whole women's division look like a joke. So the main story going into this match was Lana, and how Nia Jax had put her through a table 10 weeks in a row. Probably to punish her because her husband went to AEW and basically told WWE on live TV, you would take that brass ring and shove it up your ass. So ever since then, Lana was being punished. But at the same time as Lana was being punished, being put through a table by Nia Jax every single week, they had her win Battle Royals. They had her win number 1 contenders matches. They had her qualify for this match. And the story going into this match was do not tag in Lana. So Lana tagged in very briefly Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler made Lana tag out of the match and stand there on the steps away from the ring so she could not tag in, and just looking like an absolute idiot. And then the worst part was, you had Shayna Baszler get disqualified, you had Bianca Belair and Nia Jax get counted out when it was so obvious that they had time to get back in the ring, just to make Lana the sole survivor. Now let's talk about Lana. Lana came off one of the worst years of booking I have ever seen from anyone. She came into the year as Bobby Lashley's new wife in that horribly built storyline, making Lana look like an absolute idiot who, I don't even know what to say who she was. I still don't get to this day why she split with Rusev, saying he cheated on her, saying he just wanted to have sex, when at the same time she cheated on him, and every time you saw her and Bobby Lashley, all they were doing was getting all hot and heavy and whatnot. Hubba hubba, honey honey. And then eventually, the dumb breakup of her and Lashley after Lashley loses one match. They have her and Natalya be a tag team briefly, for who knows why. So you basically make her look like the entire biggest joke. Give her some of the biggest heat you've ever produced. And the biggest white heat, basically, I could say, heat that you want her off the TV so bad. You then give her all these opportunities and make her the sole survivor of Survivor Series? What in the hell? Like, this match made everyone look like a joke, look like idiots, and quite frankly, I was worried they were going to have Lana win the Royal Rumble. I'll be honest, with how bad of the booking this was, and how many things they were giving Lana, I honestly thought this was setting up for Lana to win the Royal Rumble, which would have been absolutely stupid. Thank God again they went with the EST of WWE, Bianca Belair. Definitely, in my opinion, the worst match in WWE. In wrestling in 2020. This women's 5-on-5 Survivor Series elimination match. Drum roll, please. It's time for the overall storyline of the year. Will it be Omega and Paige versus the Young Bucks? Or will it be the Boneyard match? Let's roll.
DaMan's overall match of the year in wrestling in 2020 is Kenny Omega and Hangman Adam Page versus the Young Bucks for the AEW World Tag Team Championships at AEW Revolution 2020.
If you're a match that, like I said before, literally has me on my toes, has me guessing so many times who is going to win this match, and just the outcomes were not limited in this match, you bet for sure you're going to win the overall match of the year. Like I said, this match involved people that have history with each other. It tested friendships. It tested alliances. It teased alliances. It teased, betrayals. It teased, title changes. It had it all in there. It was an amazing match. I've already said enough about it. This is my overall match of the year. Kenny Omega and Hangman Adam Page versus the Young Bucks for the AEW World Tag Team Championships at AEW Revolution 2020. That was matches of the year. Now let's move on to the next category, which is pay-per-view of the year. We will do 4. The best for AEW, best for WWE, worst overall, and the overall pay-per-view of the year. Let's start off with this one, with the very stacked card, the very high expectations, and just everything it brought to the table. this one, was one of those shows that I was not afraid to go in with high expectations for. It was a good bounce back from the previous pay-per-view that had, in some ways, disappointed a little bit, but this one capitalized, and it was an awesome show. Here's my AEW Best Pay-Per-View of the Year for 2020.
DaMan's Pay-Per-View of the Year in AEW for 2020 is AEW Full Gear.
Full Gear followed up what was my opinion, and a lot of people's opinion so far, the worst pay-per-view so far for AEW All Out. That show mainly suffered because of because mainly of the Matt Hardy incident. It lost the crowd, and they just, no matter how hard they tried, and with how hot it was outside that night, they just were not able to regain the audience, unfortunately. But AEW Full Gear, holy smokes. Stacked card, match of the year candidates, awesome moments, awesome storytelling. This one had it all. From the opening match of Kenny Omega and Hangman Adam Page in the finals of the AEW number 1 contenders eliminator tournament for the AEW World Championship, to crap, I already drew a blank. That is not good. I'm so sorry. But we also had Darby Allin and Cody Rhodes for the TNT Championship. Also another awesome match. We had the match between FTR and the Young Bucks. The long-awaited dream match, of course, that we had been expecting for quite a while. The main event that show, we had Jon Moxley versus Eddie Kingston. Again, a man who basically made himself a star and got himself this world title opportunity in the I Quit match. And several more matches. Stacked card, top to bottom. Amazing storytelling. Amazing moments. It was just an awesome show. By far, my favorite, not get too far myself, one of my favorite wrestling pay-per-views of the year for sure. And it was one, again, that they bounced back. Well, also credit where credit's due, also Matt Hardy and Sammy Guevara's Ultimate Deletion match. That was actually a very good match. I'll give that one the credit that it definitely deserves. Because also, even though I said the match earlier, the match disappointed a little, Chris Jericho and MJF had their match, and MJF won, so that led to MJF joining the Inner Circle, and a few other things probably happened as well, and I can't remember off the top of my head. But, phenomenal show, great show, and my best AEW pay-per-view of the year for 2020. It's very obvious to me what the best one for WWE is. I mean, even after the pandemic happened, WWE did their best, at times with their pay-per-views, and, shortening them in length. There's some that, still were good. I give, SummerSlam a rub. Which other ones? WrestleMania was a good try, even though it probably could have used a crowd. TLC wasn't too bad. Hell in a Cell was actually pretty good, but, not all of them were good. To me, the best one was by far the one in front of fans. The biggest one that was in front of fans. And it's all the way back to January 26th, 2020. A night where a lot of great memories were made for sure. And one of the last very exciting moments as wrestling fans that we've had for the time being. Let's go to my best WWE pay-per-view of 2020.
DaMan's best WWE pay-per-view is the Royal Rumble.
January 26, 2020 was a rough day for the world. The sudden death of Kobe Bryant and his daughter definitely, left us in awe and just shock. But this show, boy did it wake up our spirits. There was a lot of good things that happened on this show. The opening match, even though it was a horrible feud, Roman Reigns and Baron Corbin, Falls Count Anywhere, was actually a pretty solid match. I'll give it the credit that it deserves. We also had a good match between Becky Lynch and Asuka in a storyline where Asuka's basically one of the only people that Becky Lynch was not able to beat. Even as champion, she couldn't beat Asuka. And a year earlier at Rumble 2019, we had a great match, and then we had yet another great match in this one here. We even also had the Women's Royal Rumble match, which was good. The little disappointment of Charlotte Flair winning was a little bit off, but it was still a pretty good match. Had some good surprises in that one. And of course, it was also one of the first great nights on the main roster for Bianca Belair, as both her and Shayna Baszler would eliminate 8 superstars each in that match. But again, Charlotte Flair won the match and would go on to challenge Rhea Ripley for the NXT Women's Championship. I remember we also got Bayley and Lacey Evans. I didn't care about that match. We did get The Fiend Bray Wyatt versus Daniel Bryan in a strap match for the Universal Championship, and that was a pretty darn good match. And then probably missed a match or two in there. Can't remember for sure off the top of my head. If I did, I'm sorry. But we also had the Royal Rumble, the Men's Rumble match. And at first, I hated the match. I absolutely hated it. I hated how they're having Brock Lesnar basically take everybody out. But then in the long run, it worked out great. Set up for a big moment where Drew McIntyre claymored Brock's ass out of the match. We had, again, a brief reunion of Team Rated RKO. We had the return of Edge in the match. We had Keith Lee go toe-to-toe with Brock Lesnar, which was pretty awesome. We had Seth Rollins also appear and try to, take over the Rumble match with the rest of his crew, with Buddy Murphy and the Authors of Pain in the match. And again, we had, Edge eliminating Randy Orton and winning it and being basically third place in the Rumble match in his first performance back, which was freaking awesome to see. And then we have Drew McIntyre eliminating Roman Reigns to win the Royal Rumble match, with just a very outstanding moment again. The crowd just popped for McIntyre that night, as it was a long waited to see McIntyre get this opportunity. Him winning the Royal Rumble again was just absolutely huge. And it set up perfectly for the year of Drew McIntyre. Just a very exciting show, and definitely one of the last shows in front of fans that we were allowed to enjoy. And it was just awesome. I love this show, and I'll definitely go back again at some point and watch it again. Royal Rumble 2020, best pay-per-view of the year for me in WWE in 2020. Worst pay-per-view of the year, oh boy. The weakest pay-per-view of the year for AEW was definitely AEW All Out. But that was still a decent show, just had some problems. WWE, though, had definitely some bad ones. So most ones that was what it was, like, Backlash, Survivor Series. Of course, if I had to pick for a second worst one, I didn't really go with this, I didn't really watch the show, but Super Showdown with the bad booking on that one. But to me, the one that was the most hokey, the one with a bunch of the dumbest finishes you had, predictable victories, and just an overall god-awful show of WWE just overproducing everything, and it's not working out. This is my pick for worst pay-per-view of the year for 2020, altogether.
DaMan's worst pay-per-view of the year in 2020 in wrestling is WWE's Extreme Rules, The Horror Show.
Ah, boy. If they want to call this Extreme Rules, The Horror Show, this indeed was a horror show. this was a bad show. This show was just, with very few stipulations, rules that are just, why the heck were they even broken? That made no sense, and just the hokiness of this was just absolutely terrible. Ugh. I think we had a match with New Day, Cesaro, and Nakamura, where Cesaro and Nakamura won the tag titles, and that was decent. And we also had Bayley and Nikki Cross that was what it was and did good. But from there on out, boy, did this show just suck. What else did we get on the show? We had, of course, the eye for an eye match between Seth Rollins and Rey Mysterio. I'll give them the fact that this match actually was not that bad wrestling-wise. But this whole idea of the winner having to gouge out the loser's eye, basically, just did not work. Especially with how it ended, too, with Rey Mysterio getting his eye gouged out, which to me felt like a total waste of time, because nothing even made anything difference. Dominic did not turn on Rey for that match. Basically the same thing that happened that started this feud just happened again, and it just led to Seth Rollins puking like crazy for no reason after the match. That was dumb. We had Asuka and Sasha Banks for the Raw Women's Championship. Should have tore the freaking house down. Get ruined with that dumb ending of Bayley taking out the referee and taken out, and Bayley playing special guest referee when she has no authority to even declare herself that. We did have a match that at first was both like a genius, but at the same time, it was so unpredictable. The match with Drew McIntyre and Dolph Ziggler, where Dolph basically said, look, it's Extreme Rules for me only. And basically taking full advantage of just having the rules all on his side in his favor just so he could defeat Drew McIntyre. Would have made Dolph look like a genius if he actually stood a chance to win the match. Problem was you knew Dolph was not winning the match. And then, I'm sure I may have forgotten about a couple other things, but I don't even want to remember them. But we also had the swamp fight in the main event. Wasn't even for the Universal titles. It was between Braun Strowman and Bray Wyatt. Basically, the leader of worlds, Bray Wyatt, versus Braun Strowman. This was all just filler, just for them to have Braun Strowman versus The Fiend at SummerSlam. This match was awful. It made no sense. The story being told in the match felt pointless. It did absolutely nothing for Strowman. It did nothing for Bray Wyatt except the return of The Fiend since, who knows when. But super hokey, stuff that made absolutely no sense, and it was just a bad show. It was my worst pay-per-view of the year for me in 2020. And the next one, of course, what was the overall pay-per-view of the year? Drum roll, please.
DaMan's overall best pay-per-view of the year in 2020 is AEW Full Gear.
As I said before, Full Gear was just one of those pay-per-views that had an extremely stacked card that I was not afraid to set my expectations for high. With the amount of Match of the Year candidates on this show, the endless number of so many other things that happen, the moments, the title changes, the matches in general, like I said before. This was another, of course, a test too for AEW, since this was their first pay-per-view since their by far worst pay-per-view, AEW All Out, and them working back to getting things right. And yeah, like I said, this was an excellent show and my overall pay-per-view of the year for 2020. So now let's move on to some best and worst of the characters. Well, I'm sorry, just best, really. We're going to have the best babyface first off. We're going to do just AEW, WWE, and overall. So first, let's go for the one in AEW. Now, this one was tough because, you see, I could have gone with Jon Moxley. But Jon Moxley, to me, was more of like an overall badass and more of like a tweener. He kind of came into the year, slowly being more on the face side after being kind of more on the heelish side going into the beginning of the year. So him, I feel, was more like a tweener, so I didn't count him. He was really the only other big baby face. I mean, Cody Rhodes, yeah, but at the same time, didn't quite light the world on fire to me. I gave my top baby face of the year for AEW to a guy who, again, was not supposed to be a big star. He even, got doubted by Chris Jericho, but it took him feuding with Chris Jericho after a match, of course, he had with Pac at AEW Revolution for him to become a star. This is another guy that AEW basically built from the bottom floor up and made him super entertaining for us. So that's why this man is my AEW best babyface of the year for 2020.
DaMan's babyface of the year in AEW in 2020 is Orange Cassidy.
Did anyone really think Orange Cassidy was ever going to become a star? Again, Chris Jericho in some of his podcasts had even mentioned he thought that this kid had nothing. But it took Orange Cassidy, a man of very few words, to have just a stellar, unique performance against Pac at Revolution 2021. He may have lost, but he got, in my opinion, one of the biggest pops and reactions of the night. And of course, they will go on to further on his career to, help him, season out his character when he feuded with Chris Jericho, who's just a master at everything he touches. Is he perfect? No, but he is very darn good, and not only making himself look good, but who he's working with look good as well. He's a man that was, even though he didn't win any titles, he had opportunities for a TNT championship. He's just a man who is a prime example of working from the bottom and making his way to the top. You definitely consider him probably in one of the most improved categories I'd see. But, with the hard work he put in, the unexpectancy of, him being a star, and just what he was able to become, definitely makes him, to me, my top babyface in AEW for 2020. This went out to the best babyface in WWE. After, already proclaiming, how excellent of a year he had, there's no doubt in my mind on this one. Let's get to my best babyface of the year for 2020 for WWE.
DaMan's babyface of the year in WWE in 2020 is Drew McIntyre.
2020 again was the year of Drew McIntyre, when he found his spot at the top, and he did not look back at all. Drew McIntyre, again, was a heel for most of his career, basically. But at the beginning of 2020, basically transitioned to a babyface. It was random, but it came at a time where he was just starting to cut promos and just be himself. And after he won the title, he won the Royal Rumble, again, the main story for the rest of the year was just Drew McIntyre being himself, being that, the comeback, that story that he had with him getting fired and coming back eventually to WWE and getting this opportunity to be back on top, to fulfilling his full potential, as he definitely been destined for quite a long time. Like I said, it was just a simple story to not only make him one of the top stars by just being himself, but also being one of the best baby faces. Again, he just had to be himself and tell his own story. That's all they had to do. And they knuckled it right on the button, with the man just oozing confidence more and more. You can show the confidence just grow on him. The star power just rapidly rocket ship to the top. as it should have when he had eliminated Brock Lesnar from the Royal Rumble. And I also give him credit also for when he had briefly lost the title to Randy Orton after losing the Hell in a Cell match, how not only did they just give him the title back, they had his character seasoned a little bit more by improving his entrance with the sword entrance, with the Scottish kilt. It was just a very well put together thing to continue to have him improve and to give him like some more of like a babyface momentum push for him to get his title back and earn that match against Roman Reigns at Survivor Series. Again, he's a good man, definitely handled being at the top very well. Drew McIntyre is my WWE Babyface of the Year for 2020. And of course, the pick for the best babyface overall for the year, let's roll.
And DaMan's overall babyface of the year in 2020 in wrestling is Drew McIntyre.
And again, Drew McIntyre is your overall babyface of the year. Like I said, this man just, again, literally was just himself. That's all he had to do, was just play himself. Just a story of him coming back, to him just, developing strong. Again, just, that's all he had to do. And just that alone, single-handedly, to me, made him the best babyface of 2020 in wrestling. That's my overall pick there. Now, let's move on to the next category. And after this category, we'll take a brief intermission as I will, again, use the bathroom, do whatever I have to do, and check the live chat. But let's talk about the villains. Starting off with AEW. There was no doubt about it that this man was destined to be one of the best heels in the company. Just one of those guys who, his in-ring work, is great. May not be his strong suit, but the microphone, the promos, the character is what makes him one of the best for sure. He is better than you, and you know it.
DaMan's heel of the year in AEW in 2020 is MJF.
If I could make a list of superstars to definitely not ever step foot in WWE, one of them for sure would be MJF. If this man was in WWE, the booking he would get is exactly how The Miz has been booked lately. Just a scum, a coward, someone that, just loses all the time. You wouldn't be able to take him seriously. Well, MJF, of course, already had the potential going into 2020. My thing was, I was waiting to see him show me more. And that's exactly what he did. Again, the feud with him and Cody, the build was fantastic. Obviously, basically saying he'll give Cody what he wants if he does these three things. 1, not touch him until that match at Revolution. 2, take 10 lashes on live TV. That's another honorable mention for segment of the year for AEW. Those 10 lashes and that emotional segment. That one as well. He had to beat Wardlow in a steel cage, and then he got the match. And then, of course, Cody Rhodes would put over MJF. He would contain a few with, legs like Jungle Boy. He feuded with Jon Moxley for the world title. I thought they probably should have given him the world title at All Out. They did not. I also still think he has a case for making his case to get in a rematch. But it does not look like they're going to be going there with that, unfortunately. Now, of course, he ended the year by joining the Inner Circle. Playing the manipulative mind games, trying to basically get the Inner Circle to turn on Chris Jericho. Instead, though, led to the Inner Circle turning on him, but he's always one step ahead of you as he had formed his own stable as well. And if I can compare him to two guys that are actually a tag team that are in his stable that he's with right now, how about FTR? Nothing crazy in the ring, but just the simple psychology and the storytelling that this man can do, it's just unreal. And keep in mind, he's only like, 24, 25 years old? He's still young, and he's already this good. He's a winner of the Dynamite Diamond Ring twice in a row, and he is better than you, and you know it. MJF, one of the best assholes in the business, is my AEW heel of the year for 2020. Now, let's roll on to the best heel in WWE. This one was a no-brainer. Even though, of course, this guy was only a heel for the last half of the year, we all knew this was long in coming. We never thought we'd see this. And just what he has done ever since turning heel, it's been masterful. Definitely one of the best in the business. Here is my best heel of the year for WWE in 2020.
The man's heel of the year in WWE in 2020 is Roman Reigns.
I still think I'm pinching myself. WWE finally pulled the trigger in 2020 and turned him heel. He turned heel after he had taken some time off for the summer to spend time with his family during the pandemic. The man even dropped himself out of the Universal title match against Goldberg at WrestleMania. Which, be honest, imagine how bad that match would have been. Just saying. But his heel character has consisted with him aligning with Paul Heyman, his special counsel. Which, by the way, they have made this alliance so different than Paul Heyman and Brock Lesnar. Even though Paul Heyman still talks on the microphone and gives his thoughts, they made it the fact also that Roman Reigns has more power over Paul Heyman. But Roman has continued just to play the system like a fiddle. He tried to, get into the head of his cousin Jey Uso, succeeded, and now has him doing his own dirty work. And he continued to, have great matches and great storytelling against guys like Braun Strowman or Drew McIntyre, or even his stuff with Kevin Owens. The guy is just, believably untouchable. He plays that character that just has, that thinks he has the power. Plays the system like a fiddle, and just succeeds with everything he touches. He may have to pull a few tactics here and there to win, but it's just believable stuff. Because not only is this man making him look himself good in the ring, but he's also making his opponent look like a star in the ring as well. Roman Reigns is my WWE heel of the year for 2020. Who is my overall heel of the year? Let's stick with the same man.
The man's overall heel of the year in 2020 is Roman Reigns.
First of all, credit where credit is due to MJF. I said at the end of 2019, I picked Daniel Bryan as my heel of the year for 2019. I said MJF's awesome, but he's just getting started. I want to see more. I saw a good amount more from MJF. But after, of course, him capitalizing and going even a step further with this new stable he has, I had to think, he still have more off the offer. Roman Reigns, though, of course, is doing some of the best work of his career by far. Again, did anyone ever think WWE would pull the trigger and turn this man heel? That was almost as impossible as it was for someone like Edge or Daniel Bryan to return to the ring. Just the fact they even made Roman Reigns a heel just constantly has us asking, what took you so long, WWE? Why didn't you pull the trigger on this sooner? You could have avoided so much problems the past several years. But now that he has, fully turned heel, he's the tribal chief. He's playing the system like a fiddle. He's taking the story of him saying that he's taking that, the title as a right and not a need. How he needs to be on top and stay at the top. How he's made people the stars that they are. Again, you gotta boo this man just to respect him for playing the character right. You sat on it for too long, didn't even give him a chance to be, that guy, the badass he could be, and now look what he's doing. He's doing, again, some of the best work of his career. He is finally getting the long, lengthy title reign he should be getting, as other ones were cut short because of, suspensions or leukemia, or WWE just worrying that he is not getting the right response that he should be. Again, they're finally done it right with Roman Reigns. And again, MJF is going to be on a whole nother level this year with his new stable. But hats off for him. But my pick to win the 2020 Heel of the Year, Roman Reigns, by far. With that being said, guys, we still have a little ways to go for this stream. We have 3 more in the upcoming category, and we'll have a couple categories in a row where it's just one of each. And the last couple, we still have a little ways to go, so we'll see where we get there further with this. But we'll take a quick break, guys. I'll be right back. Please stay tuned for more of DaMan's 2020 End of the Year Wrestling Awards. We'll be right back, guys. And guys, welcome back. Welcome back to the DaMan's 2020 End of the Year Wrestling Awards. As we have gone through several categories so far, and of course we talked from stuff from the WWE and AEW. Again, we've been up here for already about an hour and 45 minutes, so I am hoping it's not double timed, because I definitely, gotta get up for work tomorrow. So we're going to keep things moving pretty smooth here as I got back from my intermission. Of course, if I shall do a shout out again, as it's Happy Austin 316 Day, Stone Cold Steve Austin. I've opened a can of whoop ass. Again, I cannot pour my beer like I do, like Austin does in my bedroom, so I at least will drink a can of Yingling, or a bottle of Yingling. It's the only ones I really had in my refrigerator downstairs for this stream. But before we move on, check the live chat before we go on here. That tweet that I made of Lana, the Soul Survivor, this happened as a joke. WWE saw that tweet. He says also Lana is female Enzo. He thinks that AJ and Taker was the best overall match. He would never watch Extreme Rules 2020 again. None of us probably ever would, Tyler, my friend. But let's move on now to the next category. Most Improved Wrestlers of the Year. This one I did keep an AEW, WWE, and overall tab for this one. After this, we'll do the Breakout Star of the Year, which is only just one. One for Underutilized and one for Least Improved. And then we'll get to basically, the overall competitors like tag teams, male, female, and such, to wrap this up. So I'm going to try to get through these a little quickly because we're going on about almost 2 hours here already. So let's get started here. Here's my Most Improved Wrestler for AEW in 2020.
DaMan's Most Improved Wrestler in AEW in 2020 is Hangman Adam Page.
As I mentioned before, Hangman Adam Page benefited from being involved in the tag team with Kenny Omega this year. The storyline of him trying to fit in with the Young Bucks was one thing that just massively helped him create a character. He was given the opportunities when he first came in the main event scene. It's just that something was missing. So they backed off on him. They put him with Kenny Omega. And they basically were just trying to help him find his strides. With, him having, the beer drinking cowboy gimmick, basically. The testing of friendship with him and the Elite. Being a part of some of the best matches of the year by far, with, of course, the match at Revolution with him, Kenny, and the Young Bucks. We also saw them have a match with FTR that deserves more credit than it receives because of the fact that it lost the crowd that night. The Stadium Stampede fight, of course, he was involved in that as well, which was awesome. I forgot to mention that when I did the video for top matches in AEW, I think he even chased Sammy Guevara on a horse. There was even segments with him and, Kenny Omega at the bar. The stuff with him costing the Young Bucks the tag titles. The tag title opportunity they got with the FTR guy. To the eventual split of him and Kenny Omega. And the fantastic match he had to open up Full Gear in the finals for the number one contenders tournament for the AEW World Title at Full Gear. Hangman Adam Page, again, went from a guy who was trying to find himself to a top star ready to play in the main event scene as a single star. He just got off feuding with Matt Hardy, and he won the match where he basically gets all of Matt Hardy's quarter one earnings. And I feel like, maybe give him another program or two briefly to work with until you get to the fall. And I still say bring back, the feud bring it back with Kenny and have them feud for the AEW World Championship and have him be the one to dethrone Kenny Omega. Hangman Adam Page is my most improved wrestler in AEW for 2020. Let's go to my WWE most improved wrestler of the year. Excuse me. This was somebody that was just part of a tag team. He was never supposed to be anything more than a tag team. But with the injury to his partner, they actually brought him out as a single star. Had him work Roman Reigns, a feud that was just meant to just, season out the character more for Roman Reigns. Not just benefited Roman Reigns, it benefited this man as well, as the storytelling for this man has been off the charts ever since they gave him this opportunity. And, where he stands now, being Roman Reigns' lackey, again, the stuff they've done with this man, you never thought they'd do it. So that's why this man gets my most improved wrestler of the year for 2020.
DaMan's most improved wrestler of the year in WWE in 2020 is Jey Uso.
Main event, Jey Uso. Yep, that's right. Jey Uso himself is my most improved WWE wrestler of 2020. So Jey, of course, briefly was involved in the tag title picture for SmackDown going into WrestleMania. Then Jimmy suffered a knee injury in that ladder match at WrestleMania, and he's been out ever since. Should be back soon. I think he should be back soon. You saw Jey here and there. But then, when it came time, when Roman Reigns won the Universal Championship at Payback, Roman played the system and got his cousin a championship match. And again, it's like, okay, Roman and the Usos are basically, they're cousins in real life, but they're pretty much brothers. This basically was just a way to get Roman a little over more, so maybe more as a heel. Well, this did more than that. This not only made Roman Reigns look like a megastar, Jey Uso, for crying out loud, looked like a believable main event player who could play the game in the main event scene. They gave this man clean victories over the likes of AJ Styles, Kevin Owens, and Daniel Bryan. They had him get some eliminations, did they give an elimination? No, they did not. I'm sorry, he did not get elimination in the Survivor Series elimination match. I think the Elimination Chamber, but that's 2021. That's not 2020. But, did any of you guys ever see Jey Uso be anything more than just a tag team partner? Nuh-uh. I mean, I don't think they're ever going to pull the trigger and give him a singles title. In some ways, I feel like he should get one, though, because, he deserves it after everything he's accomplished. But, he probably will never win a singles title. But you can't deny that this man, again, proved us all wrong in 2020. That alone, to me, just makes him the most improved wrestler in WWE in 2020. Main event, Jey Uso. And for overall most improved, who is it? Hangman Adam Page or Jey Uso?
DaMan's overall most improved wrestler of the year in 2020 is Hangman Adam Page.
That's right. The Hangman, he gets my most improved nod. Like I said, I've said many times already, he's benefited from pairing with Kenny Omega. He became a master of his craft with storytelling, with, the beer-drinking cowboy gimmick. Again, he's ready to be a main event player. Hangman Adam Page is my most improved wrestler overall for 2020. 2020. And with that, for you, Hangman, here's a swig of beer. Anyways, so that is for most improved. Let's talk about the breakout star of the year. This is just going to be just one. I don't think I had this category at all for any of my other streams. But my breakout star of the year was somebody from AEW. It was not Hangman Adam Page, no. You could get given a nod to like Orange Cassidy, maybe. WWE, maybe Damian Priest in WWE. You could have given a nod to for that one. I would say there. We already had Keith Lee kind of break out in 2019. I think I gave him the breakout star of the year. Not too many, really. I had to choose from. This man, though, I felt like was already becoming a star, gaining a lot of attention in 2019. Really turned it on in 2020, having matches with the likes of Sammy Guevara, being involved in some tag team feuds, ending the year though as a champion. Something awesome. This is my 2020 breakout star of the year in all of wrestling.
DaMan's breakout star of the year in wrestling in 2020 is Darby Allin.
This man is something special. Darby Allin was one of the first names, besides Chris Jericho, Cody Rhodes, Jon Moxley, Kenny Omega, those that I would have already known about when AEW started. Darby Allin was the first one, to me, that caught my attention that I had no clue who he was. Going all the way back to his first match with Cody Rhodes at Fyter Fest 2019, which I believe ended in a draw. The unique gimmick of him. Basically, the Jeff Hardy of AEW. Daredevil style with his dark sides to him. Skateboarder, just the crazy stuff he does. Darby Allin had some great matches against the likes of Sammy Guevara. He also, I remember, had a match against Jon Moxley for the world title back in August. He was involved in a couple pretty good tag team matches as well. Again, him and Cody had several matches. Of course, his moment of the year by far came full circle whenever he had won the TNT Championship in that amazing match him and Cody had at Full Gear. You would already see them have a kind of a pay-per-view match at Fyter Fest 2019. But, they had another encounter or two. I think they faced each other, in the semifinals of the TNT Championship tournament. And then when he gets this shot against Cody Rhodes at All Out, at Full Gear, it was just an absolute masterpiece. The storytelling just off the charts about Darby Allin just coming up short against Cody. Darby finally gets the victory and defeats Cody Rhodes. And he ends the year as TNT champion. Again, the unique persona, the talent, the Daredevil style, basically bringing Extreme back into the picture a little bit on a level that Jeff Hardy can't really do anymore since he's in his 40s now. But Darby Allin, already was going into 2020 as an upcoming star, and this is the one I felt that had the best breakout year for sure. Darby Allin is my breakout star of the year in wrestling for 2020. We move on now to underutilized wrestler of the year. This man I talked about in my top 5 for most improved, underutilized, and least improved. Again, just one. You could say so many guys are underutilized, especially in the WWE. I went with this one specifically because this was a guy I'm just questioning so much. Why on earth did he choose to come back to WWE? Let's talk about it. Here's award number 10. Most underutilized in wrestling in 2020.
DaMan's underutilized wrestler of the year in 2020 is John Morrison.
Why, John? Why did you come back to WWE? At first, I was excited about it, of course. But then, when you immediately botch his return by having him appear randomly in the Miz's locker room, just for him to basically be there for Miz when Miz had a bad day, that's already a bad sign of a bad return. Then a few weeks later, you're jobbing out to Brock Lesnar in the Royal Rumble. You win the tag titles. Have a brief and decent run. Have a nice victory at WrestleMania 36. To drop the tag titles, and starting with that feud for that 2-on-1 handicap match at Backlash with Braun Strowman versus Miz and Morrison, you were already in trouble. John Morrison went from, being a main eventer, someone who should be having singles feuds against the likes of AJ Styles, Seth Rollins, Bobby Lashley, Roman Reigns for crying out loud, Matt Riddle, feuds that should be putting on clinics. Instead, he's just a very limited idiot who comes across as, Shane McMahon think Braun Strowman comes across as stupid. How about, let's say, John Morrison does the same? Just such a disappointing year. Again, why did he come back? I still want to know that. Why on earth did this guy come back to a company that already treated him like shit and just basically is doing the same exact thing to him again? And unfortunately, there really is no way out of this one. John Morrison's never going to be treated with the respect that he truly deserves. And that just sucks. So, I'll give John Morrison as the most underutilized wrestler of 2020. I'm going to keep this next one very, very brief. As I keep saying, I need to stop talking about this one. But because I'm acknowledging everything and going over things I may have already talked about, I have to briefly say something. My least improved wrestler of the year. Controversial, but here's my pick.
DaMan's least improved wrestler of the year in 2020 is the Velveteen Dream.
I've said more than enough about Velveteen Dream, so I'm keeping this brief and just moving on. Velveteen Dream obviously came into the new year of 2020. He was out with a back injury. He came back not long before TakeOver Portland and basically was lined up to be the one to dethrone Adam Cole for the NXT Championship until some allegations got in his way. And that pretty much halted his push. He got into also a car accident in June, took him off TV for a while, but then brought him back whenever it felt like he had no closure, nobody had closure with what happened with him or full understanding of what all happened with his accusations he had gotten. They tried to act like nothing ever happened, and they tried to insert him back into the North American Championship picture, and even if you do make him a heel, like I said, at this point with just how you've left us hanging with the whole thing, Velveteen Dream's career is over. It's sad to say, but it's true. Velveteen Dream's career is over. He has no star power left. He's cooled off as hell, and, you know, he just doesn't have it anymore, unfortunately. Velveteen Dream, my least improved wrestler of the year in 2020. And this is going to be the last time I ever talk about it. So, that's that one. And now, let's move on to the final couple categories here. We've got tag teams, male wrestlers, female wrestlers, and overall wrestler of the year. We'll start off with the tag teams. Again, tag team wrestling has really died down, especially in WWE. There's basically no tag team division in WWE whatsoever, male and female. But we start out with the AEW. And this one was tough because although they have stacked teams such as, like, you know, the Young Bucks, FTR, Best Friends, Santana and Ortiz, Jurassic Express, SCU, it's a pretty stacked division. But I gotta keep going with the one I keep talking about. The one that involved just great storytelling from top to bottom. And, you know, I picked them also because it's very tough to impress me with a team like this that was 2 single stars put together. And it worked out so good. So because of all that, here is my AEW Best Tag Team of the Year in 2020.
DaMan's Tag Team of the Year in AEW in 2020 is the team of Kenny Omega and Hangman Adam Page.
So why didn't I go with the Young Bucks or FTR or like SCU or Jurassic Express? Like, why did I go with the team that was put together of Kenny Omega and Hangman Adam Page? Not because they were tag champions for most of the year, but because the story they just told these guys, off the charts. Anymore, several companies, especially WWE, have a hard time just taking 2 men who are meant to be single stars and put them together and just make it work. It's very difficult to do that. With the situation that both these guys are in, as I keep saying, with Kenny Omega being, you know, the expected big name who they were just, you know, backing off on him and having him, you know, help put other people over, and Hangman Adam Page still trying to find his stride into the main event scene. Again, it just gelled out and worked so good. With them becoming a tag team, and again, the teasing of, like, you know, the tension between them, whether it's with Omega and Page, or if it's with the Young Bucks, or anybody else they had to encounter with. Again, the storytelling and the matches they had were just absolutely off the charts. I've said enough about them, but, you know, like I said, it's very tough to have a team with 2 men who are single stars impress me as much as Kenny Omega and Adam Page did. And that is why they are my best tag team in AEW in 2020. Moving on now to the best WWE tag team. Was there many? Not really. So there really was only one pick for me. Here it is.
DaMan's WWE Best Tag Team of the Year in 2020 is the Street Profits.
We want smoke. We want the smoke. Street Profits are up, and we want the smoke. That's right. Street Profits. They started the year in contention for the Raw Tag Team Championships. They eventually would win them shortly after Super Showdown, after dethroning Seth Rollins and Buddy Murphy. And, of course, these guys are amazing. They have great chemistry. Yes, there were some segments they had that were very annoying, even when they first came up to the main roster, and they were doing nothing but being, like, hype people backstage and not having matches, people were starting to get a little annoyed and sick with them. And I was worried that they were going to just run them into the ground. Or that they were also going to feel like, nobodies, since they'd had the tag titles. There's just nobody else in the fight. I gotta say, I felt Dawkins and Ford did a good job as tag team champions. Trying to make the best out of their feuds as possible. Whether if it's, against, even those horribly booked, the stuff with the Viking Raiders and anything you can do, I can do better. That was all stupid. But they had some good matches with Andrade and Angel Garza. They got switched over to SmackDown in the draft. They had feuds with a feud with the New Day and an awesome match at Survivor Series, which was great. Like I said, I gotta say these were guys that, even though they are very limited and don't have much to work with in their tag team division, they always try their best to make it work, and they still put on some very fun and stellar matches. And I also still think to this day, when that time comes, Montez Ford, you are going to be a star. I am actually very intrigued to see how Montez Ford does as a single star when that time comes. Not anytime soon, though, of course, because, trust me, it's WWE. They need tag teams. So, no time soon, but at some point, I would love to see what Montez Ford can do as a single star. Street Profits are my best tag team of 2020. And we'll move on now to the last of the worst. This is the last worst category, as we've got the worst tag team of the year. There was basically no tag team, so it all was what it was. So if I had to pick one, though, I had to pick one that was pretty much legendary in NXT, just for them to come up to the main roster, and just a name change sucks the life out of them. It happens. But that's why they are my worst tag team of 2020. Let's talk about them.
DaMan's worst tag team of the year in 2020 is the Viking Raiders.
I miss the War Raiders. I really do. I miss Hanson and Rowe. I do not like Eric and Ivar of the Viking Raiders. They're Vikings. Okay, whatever. What are they, like children's toys? Yeah. These guys, it's been all downhill for them ever since they came to the main roster. Yeah, they dominated in the ring, but their characters, the life was just absolutely sucked out of them. And, of course, what happens whenever you try to throw comedy at some people who are not meant to get comedy, they just become laughingstocks. Especially with the feud between the Viking Raiders and the Street Profits. Anything you could do, I could do better. All these dub segments with basketball and bowling and golf and track and field and axe throwing. And the constant, turkey foot romances of, Ivar, being told by every woman that he sees that he's cute, Eric not so much, to, him trying to, propose with the turkey foots to other women and whatnot. It was just so freaking hokey, and it just didn't make them funny at all whatsoever. And to me, it's just a shame, because they're talented. They were dominating, they were machines in NXT, and just one name change could ruin it all. And that's why the Viking Raiders, to me, are my worst tag team of the year for 2020. Next year, we may not even have a worst tag team of the year, because there literally is no teams left, especially in WWE. But with that being said, let's get to the overall best tag team of the year. Who is it? Is it Omega and Page? Or is it the Street Profits? Drum roll, please.
And DaMan's overall best tag team of the year in 2020 in wrestling is the team of Kenny Omega and Hangman Adam Page.
I've said many times about this team's over and all praising them. From their storytelling, from the ability to have, two superstars come together and gel well as a tag team, and eventually turn them into a main event feud is just awesome. I don't think we've been able to succeed with a booking like this for a tag team since Tommaso Ciampa and Johnny Gargano. It's just awesome stuff. I said enough about them. Congratulations, Kenny Omega and Hangman Adam Page. You are my overall Tag Team of the Year in wrestling in 2020. Alright, we have 3 more categories left. Male wrestlers, female wrestlers, and overall wrestlers. We have no more worst categories to go. So before we get there, though, let's check the live chat and see what we've got here. We just have Tyler saying worst tag team of the year for him, Ziggler and Rude, he thought. Okay? They are what they are. Not the greatest, not the worst, but nothing that special. But, that's not a bad pick, though, Tyler. But back to the stream. Best male wrestler of the year. For WWE, it's obvious. He is my top baby face of the year. He is my top storyline of the year. He is the now 2-time WWE champion, Drew McIntyre.
DaMan's AEW Best Male Wrestler of the Year in 2020 is...
Wah, wah, wah. Let's try it again. Who is my AEW Male Wrestler of the Year? As I've already given away my WWE Male Wrestler of the Year. Let's try this again.
DaMan's AEW Best Male Wrestler of the Year in 2020 is... Jon Moxley.
Someone who we have not talked about yet, surprisingly. This will not be the last time you hear about him on this list. Jon Moxley came into 2020, still, on the building blocks of AEW, and feuded with Chris Jericho for the AEW World Championship. He was just on fire. He was winning all of his matches. He was doing some good stuff. He was having some good matches against, other guys after coming off of a strong and amazing and deadly performance in the Lights Out match at Full Gear 2019 against Kenny Omega. Jon Moxley was ready to take the main event scene by storm going into 2020. He feuded with Chris Jericho, and he teased joining Inner Circle, but turned on them pretty quickly, and he won the AEW World Title. He would go on to have, plenty of great matches. He would have matches for the title against the likes of Jake Hager. He would have a match for the title against Brody Lee, rest his soul. He would also have matches against Brian Cage, and then he feuded with MJF. He even had a match with the title on the line against Darby Allin, as I mentioned earlier. Eddie Kingston also feuded with. He had also had a great match with Lance Archer. This man was just a great wrestler. He basically went out there after, having a year question whenever he was leaving WWE. And he came out there and he played his music his way. He did things his way. He just did exactly what Drew McIntyre did. He played himself. And he just had fun. Jon Moxley, which I'll save a little more for him later, is my male wrestler of the year for AEW. Now let's do the male wrestler of the year for WWE. Already said who it was. Let's get to it.
DaMan's Male Wrestler of the Year in 2020 in WWE is... Drew McIntyre.
Drew McIntyre once again gets another award as my top male wrestler of the year for 2020. again, I still say nobody in WWE had a better year than Drew McIntyre. Like Moxley, what makes these guys both in common is that, again, they're playing themselves. They had to leave WWE. I mean, Moxley is open for a WWE return, just not the time yet. McIntyre left his search to reinvent himself and made his way back to WWE and got the opportunity he had worked hard for a long time. But both these men have accomplished this by just playing themselves on TV. And I've already said enough about McIntyre in his year. McIntyre is my male superstar of the year in WWE. Who's my overall superstar of the year? Drum roll, please.
DaMan's overall male wrestler of the year in 2020 is Jon Moxley.
When you're considered the best wrestler in the world, you bet Jon Moxley is your best male wrestler of the year. Over 200 days, I think close to 300 days, can't remember exactly how long it was, as AEW World Champion. Again, the guy went all over the world. He even, of course, has worked matches in Japan recently as well as IWGP United States Champion, I believe. But again, the storylines he has done, the work he's put in, the promos he has cut, just him just digging into his own self, and even again, just improving his style a little more, a little bit like an MMA style wrestler that he is. Again, just a fantastic year for Jon Moxley, but I will save a little bit more because this is not the last time we will talk about Mr. Moxley. Move on to category number 14. I'm kind of flying through these now because I'm running out of gas. Women's Wrestlers of the Year. Starting off with AEW, which, credit where credit is due, AEW is still working on forming a women's division. Again, their women's division is still their weakest point of the show. So to me, it only makes sense to make the woman who was champion for most of the year, who worked hard all year, as your AEW Women's Wrestler of the Year.
DaMan's AEW Women's Wrestler of the Year in 2020 is Hikaru Shida.
Hikaru Shida had a strong year as she won the women's world title at AEW Double or Nothing when she defeated Nyla Rose in the no disqualification match. Of course, she'll go on to have several more matches with Nyla Rose, which kind of, outdid the feud, watered it down quite a bit. Hikaru Shida probably gained a lot of attention, though, in her match about a month and a half earlier in April, when she had busted open Dr. Britt Baker, who, even though she has not been the champion, is probably the strongest force in the women's division. They just haven't completely, let the cuffs off her yet, like they've done with Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks going into 2021. Of course, one thing I didn't mention at the beginning of this video for Brand of the Year is another thing that AEW did, though, with the women's division, was that they actually did a good job booking Britt Baker to keep her relevant, even while she was hurt. But Hikaru Shida carried the women's division the best she could with that women's title, defending against the likes of Nyla Rose and Thunder Rosa. Recently, Ryo Mizunami, Abaddon, Tai Conchi, I believe she had a match with Anna Jay, I can't remember, but, again, just, doing the best she can with what she's got. Again, this women's division is continuing to build. I'm hoping to maybe give this spot to Britt Baker next year. But with that being said, though, Hikaru Shida is my Women's Wrestler of the Year for AEW. For WWE, let's just say it's about time. Here's my WWE Women's Wrestler of the Year for 2020.
DaMan's WWE Women's Wrestler of the Year in 2020 is Sasha Banks.
So, for WWE, you had your Becky Lynches at the beginning of the year, who would go off to then be a mother and take the rest of the year off. We had the Asukas, who would fill in the holes for Becky Lynch after she had left for her maternity leave, and even though she had a lot of crap thrown at her, did the best that she could. We got the likes of Io Shirai also, who became NXT Women's Champion, had a fantastic year. Rhea Ripley, who got a chance to wrestle Charlotte at WrestleMania 36 as well. We have Bayley, who became the longest reigning SmackDown Women's Champion. But let's talk about her former tag team partner and former best friend, Sasha Banks. Sasha Banks, of course, began the year, with her alliance with Bayley. And even though a lot of the stuff they did with Bayley was very hokey, especially their stuff with Lacey Evans and some very repetitive stuff, in the long term, when you think about it, the booking with Sasha and Bayley worked. Even though it wasn't the strongest matter possible, they basically took over this entire women's division, getting all the gold as at one point they should be doing. With Bayley being SmackDown Women's Champion, Raw, they both won the tag titles together right before Backlash, I think it was. So Sasha, even though in weird style, winning the Raw Women's Championship, but then once things fell apart one by one, when it was just down to the SmackDown Women's title, Bayley turned her back on Sasha Banks. And even though I've always said that Sasha Banks works so much better as a heel, give credit where credit is due. Sasha Banks is, even though they shouldn't have done it this way, is basically playing that character where it's like, yeah, she, she's a badass, she doesn't have friends, she's meant to be a heel, but, it's for business. It's not just because she's just crazy, it's just because, she wants to be the best. She has one of the very few characters that is driven by being the best, which is what makes her unique. And, her, even though they ended the feud with her and Bayley very abruptly, she still, in my opinion, became the biggest star in the women's division of WWE this year. Due to her popularity with, her movie roles and whatnot, her overcoming her curse and defeating Bayley, going to defeat Asuka at Survivor Series, and just do the best she can with the championship. I think it's safe to say WWE's women's star of the year for sure was definitely Sasha Banks. Overall women's superstar of the year, let's get to it really quickly here.
And DaMan's overall women's wrestler of the year in 2020 is Sasha Banks.
Yep, Sasha Banks is my overall women's wrestler of the year for 2020. As I just said, she had a very good long-term story throughout the year. She had put this dark cloud over Bayley, but of course, instead of just, doing it for business, Bayley just went all psycho and eventually felt threatened, trying to keep Sasha Banks in her shadow the best she could. Eventually, though, it did not work out as Bayley, made the first move before Sasha did. And yes, there were some things they missed their storyline, but, the long-term book in the end just worked with Sasha Banks getting her SmackDown Women's Championship and breaking her curse of, her title reigns. And she's finally getting a nice, lengthy title reign with the Raw, with one of the women's titles. And she's now, a 6-time women's champion on the main roster, I think? Because she won the title. Let me think when she won the title. She won the title in 2016. 1, 2, 3 times then. She won it a 4th time the year after. I'm sorry. Well, and technically, twice this year. So, yeah, 6-time women's champion, technically she is. But she's definitely having her best run, and she's definitely hitting highs on her career with her popularity in her, movie series, whatever role she plays in. She even got to, wave the flag to start Daytona recently. Sasha Banks, again, is finally... And keep this in mind, too. Keep this in mind. back in 2018, I considered her and Bayley like the most underutilized, and how they both needed to get out of WWE. Well, even though it was a corny way of doing it, WWE gave them the shot finally after holding back on it for so long, and let them run this women's division. So with all of that happening, this was a great long time coming thing, and with Sasha Banks standing victor at the top, Sasha Banks is my overall women's wrestler of the year. Drum roll, please. The final category of my 2020 end of the year wrestling awards. The overall wrestler of the year. And it's down to either Jon Moxley for the men, Sasha Banks for the women. Who's it going to be? Let's find out. Here is my overall wrestler of 2020.
And DaMan's overall wrestler of the year in 2020 for wrestling is Jon Moxley.
Such a tough call. Such a tough call, especially when you got Drew McIntyre, who finally had arrived. Well, Jon Moxley got the heck out of WWE in 2019, and then once he had warmed up to AEW in 2019, he took it over completely in 2020. Like I've already said, not just he won the world title, but he also was basically recognized as the best wrestler in the world. He didn't have to do much. All he had to do was just be himself. Just tell that story of being out there to prove himself. Being that, another daredevil guy who does whatever he's got to do to stay on top. He's malicious. He's vicious. He finally just found his footing again. Again, just think about what Jon Moxley had been through in the months leading to him leaving WWE. How miserable he was, how he just wanted to leave and go have some fun. Do something different. And he got that. And in the long run, it was all worth it. It was all worth him leaving to reinvent himself as this MMA style fighter instead. To come to AEW. And, even in WWE, they booked him in a way where it's like he was never going to be able to put on an excellent, just one-on-one wrestling match. Good, but nothing spectacular. His bread and butter, and it still is to me, the street fights, the lights out matches, the death matches, the hardcore matches. Now he's made himself, worthy of any style of wrestling he can handle. And like I said, the story, the statement he had to make by leaving the company, starting over completely from scratch, and then what he's done to succeed the wrestling business and change it with AEW, there's no doubt about it. 2020 was the year of Jon Moxley. And Jon Moxley is my overall wrestler of the year for 2020. Oh. 2.5 hours later, we've done it. Guys, I thank you all for your patience. Thank you all, of course, for joining me for these special streams. And that's going to wrap up DaMan's 2020 End of the Year Wrestling Awards and DaMan's Best of 2020 streams as well. Again, I'm going to try my best at the end of this year to have these more ready sooner. But like I said, it's tough with me with work and my schedule, especially with December being super busy and super, grueling with my job, with it being busy season and whatnot. So I'll try to prepare these more ahead of time, but always much I can do. But that does it, guys. That is my best of and worst of wrestling in 2020. Anything in the live chat before we go? Tyler just said Moxley carried AEW in 2020. He for sure did. And Drew was the man in 2020, he thought. And that's completely cool, man. Alright, guys, it's 20 after 12. I've been out here for 2.5 hours, so I gotta get to bed, go get my shower, and then get to bed for work tomorrow. Tomorrow night, I will review AEW and NXT, hopefully both. If not, I will review whatever I don't get to review tomorrow on Thursday. Maybe not this week, but Harry Potter Let's Plays return probably next week with Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. But of course, I will still try to, again, I'm still trying to fit time in for other things on this channel. You know, I've been watching a lot of sitcom series lately, guys. I kind of want to do some sitcom reviews. I want to get back into doing stuff with my custom baseball players. I want to review, well, I mean, it's probably going to take time for something to get transferred over to the network, but I want to review, like, WWE, like, 24 specials, or any of those other, like, Untold, or Chronicles, or 365s. I want to review them, I want to, do reviews on those as well. So, with the upcoming months, we'll see what's in store for me, and we'll go from there. Again, guys, thank you again for your for joining me for this 2.5 hour stream. Ended up being, which I expected to be. Thought it was gonna be longer with where we were at for intermission, but like I said, I'll do these whenever I am able to be prepared for them. So, guys, that's my thoughts. Those are my end of the year 2020 awards for wrestling. What are your thoughts on this? What were your best and worst in all the categories that we talked about in the stream? You can leave those thoughts down in the comment section below. Be sure as always to slap a like on the video and subscribe for more content on my channel. Follow me on Twitter at DaMan'sAirboy93. Guys, I'm going to bed. Good night. Love you all. See you all later. Peace out, everybody.
No